I stood in the doorway of my estate's training room, my blood turning to ice in my veins. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched her, the new maid I'd hired just 3 days ago, moving with my 7-year-old son in perfect synchronization. But they weren't playing. They were sparring. Real combat movements. Lethal precision. She blocked his punch with the grace of a seasoned fighter, then swept his legs in a controlled arc that should have been impossible for someone wearing a housekeeping uniform. My son, little Dmitri, rolled and came up grinning, his eyes alive with a fire I hadn't seen since his mother died 2 years ago. The woman, Amara, she'd said her name was, moved like water and struck like lightning. Every motion was calculated, professional, deadly. This wasn't some self-defense class. This was military-grade combat training. And she was teaching my son. My hand instinctively moved to the gun at my waist. In my world, coincidences didn't exist. People didn't just appear in your life with hidden skills and ulterior motives without reason. I'd built my empire on paranoia and precision, and both were screaming at me now that this woman was dangerous. But as I watched Dmitri laugh, actually laugh, for the first time in months, something held me back from storming in there with my security team. Who was she? What did she want? And why did watching her move make my heart race with something that wasn't quite fear? Before I tell you how I discovered the truth that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my past, about my enemies, and about the woman who would either destroy my family or save it, I want to know something. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching this from. Don't be shy. And if you're ready for a story about secrets, survival, and the thin line between vengeance and love, hit that subscribe button because what happens next will leave you speechless. My name is Nikolai Volkov, and I've been called many things: ruthless, calculating, a monster in expensive suits. All of them are true. In the underworld of organized crime, I'd carved out an empire built on fear, loyalty, and the kind of violence that kept people awake at night. But none of that prepared me for the chaos that began the moment Amara Okonkwo walked through my door with a resume that was too clean and eyes that held too many secrets. 3 days earlier, my head of staff, Mrs. Petrov, had brought her to my study for the final interview. I barely looked up from the contracts I was reviewing, documents that detailed a weapons shipment worth $8 million. Hiring household staff was beneath my attention. That's what I paid Mrs. Petrov to handle. Mr. Volkov, this is Amara Okonkwo. She comes highly recommended for the housekeeping position. Mrs. Petrov's voice cut through my concentration. I glanced up, ready to give a cursory nod and return to my work. But the woman standing before me made me pause. She was tall, maybe 5'10", with rich dark skin that seemed to absorb the light from my study's chandelier. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and she wore a modest gray dress that should have made her fade into the background. Should have. Instead, she commanded the space with a quiet intensity that set off alarm bells in my mind. But it was her eyes that truly caught my attention. Deep brown, almost black, they met mine without flinching. In my world, people either cowered or challenged. She did neither. She simply observed, as if she were the one conducting the interview. Miss Okonkwo, I said, setting down my pen. Your resume indicates 5 years of domestic service with high-profile families in Europe. Yet there's a 2-year gap between your last position and now. Explain. Personal matters, Mr. Volkov, she replied, her accent carrying hints of West Africa mixed with something else, British, perhaps, or European. Family illness. I was needed at home. It was a reasonable answer. Too reasonable. Too rehearsed. I leaned back in my chair, studying her with the same intensity one used when interrogating my enemies. And you're aware of the unique nature of this household? The security requirements? The discretion needed? I understand perfectly, she said, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something dark and knowing. I can assure you, Mr. Volkov, I'm very good at keeping secrets. The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. But Mrs. Petrov vouched for her references, which had all checked out, and I had more pressing concerns than a new maid. My son needed stability, not another staff member leaving because they couldn't handle the reality of who we were. Fine. You start tomorrow, I said, dismissing them both with a wave. That was my first mistake. For the first 2 days, Amara was everything Mrs. Petrov promised: efficient, quiet, invisible. She moved through the estate like a ghost, maintaining the household with a precision that impressed even my exacting standards. But more importantly, she was kind to Dmitri. My son had built walls around himself since his mother's death. Lung cancer had taken Svetlana slowly, painfully, and watching her fade had broken something in our boy. He'd stopped laughing, stopped playing, stopped being a child. He moved through our mansion like a small ghost, and it shattered what was left of my heart every single day. But on the second evening, I walked past the kitchen and heard something I hadn't heard in months: Dmitri laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but real, genuine laughter. I peered through the doorway and saw Amara teaching him to make traditional Nigerian chin-chin, the kitchen counter dusted with flour, both of them wearing matching expressions of concentration that dissolved into giggles when a piece of dough flew across the room. You have to be gentle, little warrior, she said, her voice warm and patient. Just like when you're training. Too much force breaks things. The right amount of pressure shapes them. Training? My attention sharpened. What training? But Dmitri just nodded seriously, trying again with the dough, and I pushed the comment aside as a metaphor. Perhaps she'd been referring to his piano lessons or his studies. That night, I stood in my dead wife's room. I'd preserved it exactly as she'd left it, unable to let go, and stared at her photograph. I'm trying, Svetlana, I whispered to the empty space. I'm trying to keep him safe, to keep him whole. But I don't know how to reach him anymore. The photograph offered no answers, just the eternal smile of a woman who'd seen the monster I was and loved me anyway. The next morning, I had an early meeting with my captains to discuss the Dmitry Kozlov situation. Kozlov was a rival trying to move into my territory, and we needed to send a message. The meeting ran long, tempers flared, and I had to remind one of my more hot-headed lieutenants why I was in charge with a demonstration involving a knife and his favorite finger. By the time I returned to the estate, it was late afternoon, and I was covered in blood that wasn't mine. I headed straight for my private quarters to shower and change, taking the route through the east wing that passed by the old training room, a space Svetlana had insisted on when we first bought the estate, though I'd never used it. The door was usually locked, the room gathering dust. But today, the door was ajar. And through it came the unmistakable sounds of combat. That's when I saw them. Amara and Dmitri, moving together in a deadly dance that made my breath catch. She wasn't playing at teaching him self-defense. This was real tactical training, the kind my own men received from former Spetsnaz instructors. I watched as she demonstrated a knife defense, her movements so smooth they looked choreographed. But I'd been in enough knife fights to recognize authentic technique when I saw it. She showed Dmitri how to redirect an attacker's momentum, how to strike at vulnerable points, how to move from defense to offense in a heartbeat. Again, she said firmly. And remember, little warrior, fighting isn't about anger. It's about surviving. It's about protecting what you love. Dmitri nodded, his face serious, and executed the move with remarkable precision for a 7-year-old. When he got it right, Amara's face lit up with pride, and she pulled him into a quick hug. Your mother would be so proud of you, she said softly. I froze. How did she know about Svetlana? I'd given Mrs. Petrov strict instructions not to discuss family matters with the staff. But before I could process that, Amara's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto mine through the window with the awareness of a trained operative who knew when they were being watched. For a moment, we stared at each other, and I saw her calculating, deciding how to play this. Then she smiled, slow, deliberate, and completely unafraid, and I knew with absolute certainty that nothing about Amara Okonkwo was what it seemed. I crashed through the training room door like a hurricane, my hand already on my weapon. Dimitri jumped, startled, but Amara simply straightened, placing herself between me and my son with a protective instinct that should have been impossible for someone who'd known him for 3 days. "Papa." Dimitri's voice was small, afraid. Not afraid of her, afraid of me and what I might do. "Go to your room, Dimitri." "Now," I commanded, my voice cold and controlled despite the rage building in my chest. "But Papa, we were just..." "Now." He flinched, and I hated myself for it, but I couldn't deal with my son's feelings when there was a potential threat standing in my home. Dimitri ran past me, shooting a worried glance back at Amara, who gave him an encouraging nod that only fueled my anger. The door closed behind him, and I turned the full force of my attention on the woman who'd infiltrated my home. "Who sent you? Kozlov? The Chechens? One of the families from Moscow?" She didn't even blink. "No one sent me, Mr. Volkov." "Bullshit." I pulled my gun, aiming it directly at her head. Most people would have panicked, begged, or at least shown some sign of fear. Amara simply sighed, looking more annoyed than afraid. "If I wanted you dead, you would be," she said calmly. "I've had 3 days and countless opportunities. You take your coffee at 6:15 every morning, alone in your study. You check on Dimitri every night at 9:30, and for exactly 4 minutes, you stand in the corridor outside his room with your back to the stairs, completely vulnerable. Last Tuesday, you met with your weapons supplier in the warehouse on Dostoevsky Street, and you stayed behind alone for 20 minutes to inspect the shipment. Should I continue?" My blood ran cold. She was right about all of it. "Then what do you want?" "I want to keep your son alive," she said, and something in her voice made me lower the gun slightly. "Because in approximately 6 weeks, Kozlov is going to make a move against you, and when he does, Dimitri will be his primary target. Not for ransom. For revenge." The gun came back up. "How do you know this?" "Because I used to work for him," she said simply. "I was his top enforcer for 3 years. His secret weapon, actually. The Black Angel, they called me, though I doubt you've heard that name. I specialized in infiltration and elimination. Clean jobs. No traces." My mind raced. The Black Angel was a myth, a ghost story used to scare lower-level criminals. Supposedly, this assassin had taken out 7 high-ranking targets in 2 years, and no one had ever gotten a clear look at them. "You're lying." "Am I?" She moved so fast I barely registered it. 1 second she was standing 5 feet away, the next my gun was on the floor and I was on my knees with her arm around my throat, her voice a whisper in my ear. "If I wanted you dead, Nikolai Volkov, you would be. But I don't. I want you alive. Because Kozlov doesn't just want your territory or your business. He wants to hurt you the way you hurt him. And he's going to do it by taking your son." She released me and stepped back, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. I grabbed my gun, but this time I didn't point it at her. "Why would you betray Kozlov? Why help me?" "Because he ordered me to kill a child," she said, and for the first time, I heard real emotion in her voice, disgust, fury, pain. A 10-year-old girl whose only crime was being the daughter of someone who'd crossed him. "I'd done terrible things in my life, Mr. Volkov, but I have lines. Children are that line. So you ran. So I fought. I got the girl out, got her and her mother into witness protection with the Americans. Then I burned 3 of Kozlov's operations to the ground and disappeared. He spent the last 2 years looking for me, and 3 months ago, he found out where I was hiding. I barely escaped. I studied her, my instincts warring with logic. Everything in my experience told me not to trust her. But something in her story rang true. And you came here because I did my research. Kozlov has been obsessed with you for 5 years, ever since you killed his brother in that warehouse dispute. He's been patient, building his strength, waiting for the right moment. And that moment is coming. He's assembled a team specifically trained to breach your security. They're going to come during the charity gala you're hosting next month, when your attention is divided, when there will be hundreds of people in your home. They'll take Dmitri in the chaos, and by the time you realize what's happened, your son will be gone. Why should I believe any of this? She walked to her pocket slowly, telegraphing the movement, and pulled out a flash drive. Because I brought proof. Security footage from Kozlov's compound, communications between his men, financial records showing payments to the mercenaries he's hired. It's all there. Check it if you want. Take your time. But while you're deciding whether to trust me, ask yourself this: do you really want to risk your son's life on the chance that I'm lying? I took the flash drive, my mind already working through the implications. If she was telling the truth, I needed to act fast. If she was lying, keeping her close while I verified her story would give me the opportunity to find out what she really wanted. Assuming I believe you, I said carefully, why teach Dmitri to fight? He's 7 years old. Because if they get to him, and Mr. Volkov, these people are very good, he'll need every advantage to survive until you can find him. I'm not teaching him to be a soldier. I'm teaching him to be a survivor. There's a difference. I thought of Dmitri's laugh, the light in his eyes I'd seen during their training. He seems happy with you. Because I treat him like a person, not a porcelain doll that might shatter, she said. With respect, Mr. Volkov, you've been so busy trying to protect him from your world that you've forgotten to let him live in it. A child who knows how to defend himself is more confident, more aware, more alive than one who's kept in a bubble of fear. Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. And what do you get out of this? Redemption? Forgiveness? No, she said softly. Those aren't possible for people like us. But maybe purpose. Maybe the chance to save one child, since I couldn't save them all. That's enough. I looked at this woman, this killer, this ghost, this stranger who'd walked into my life and turned it upside down, and made a decision that would change everything. You have 1 week to prove you're telling the truth, I said. During that time, you continue training Dmitri, but under my supervision. You don't leave this estate. You don't make any outside contact. And if I find out you've lied about even the smallest detail, I will kill you myself. Slowly. Clear? Crystal, she said, and extended her hand. For what it's worth, Mr. Volkov, I'm sorry it had to be this way. But I'm glad I found you before they did. I didn't shake her hand. Not yet. We'll see if you still feel that way in a week. As I left the training room, flash drive clutched in my hand, I realized that everything had just changed. Either I'd just made the best decision of my life, or I'd invited my son's killer into our home and given her exactly what she wanted: access, trust, and time. Only one way to find out which. The flash drive contained enough evidence to start a war. I spent the entire night in my study, my tech specialist, Yuri, hunched over his laptop while I paced behind him, chain-smoking cigarettes I'd quit years ago. Boss, this is real, Yuri said, his face pale in the computer's glow. These security codes match Kozlov's compound. I've verified them against the system scan we did last year when we were planning the Belgrade operation. And these financial transfers, see here? This payment to Viktor Sokolov, 200,000 euros. I know this guy, boss. Former FSB, now he works freelance. High-end extractions and kidnappings. And this one, to Adriana Flores, she's a tech specialist who can disable any security system in the world. I leaned over his shoulder, studying the documents. Names, dates, locations, it was all there, a complete dossier on Kozlov's plan to destroy me by taking the one thing I loved more than my own life. The gala, I muttered. He's really going to hit us during the gala. According to this timeline, yes. They'll create a distraction, looks like they're planning to stage a kitchen fire, and while your security is dealing with evacuating the guests, a 4-person team will breach through the East Wing, where Dmitri's room is located. They have detailed blueprints of the estate, boss. Everything. I crushed the cigarette in my hand, not even feeling the burn. Get me everything we have on Amara Okonkwo. Real name, background, every job she did for Kozlov. I want to know who she is. Yuri's fingers flew across the keyboard. What he pulled up made my blood run cold. Amara Okonkwo was born in Lagos, Nigeria, to a diplomat father and a mother who'd been a champion martial artist. At 16, her parents were killed in what was officially labeled a car accident but what everyone knew was an assassination. The girl disappeared into the system, resurfaced in Europe at 20, and then, nothing. No records, no trace, nothing until 3 years ago when she appeared in Kozlov's organization. But Yuri had found something else, a sealed Interpol file that took him 2 hours to crack. Inside was a list of names, targets who'd been eliminated with the precision and signature style of the Black Angel. But at the bottom of the file was a note from an Interpol agent, subject demonstrates consistent pattern, refuses contracts involving children or families. Suspect possible moral code despite criminal activity. She was telling the truth, I whispered. The child she saved, it's documented. Kozlov put out a hit on her after that. 500,000 euros, dead or alive. Boss, if Kozlov finds out she's here, then he'll come for her. Which means he'll come for us even faster. I stood, my decision made. Double the security. I want eyes on every entrance, every window, every possible breach point. And Yuri? Not a word about this to anyone. If there's a mole in our organization feeding information to Kozlov, I want them to think we're clueless. What about the woman? I looked out the window toward the East Wing, where I knew Amara was sleeping in the staff quarters. She just became our greatest asset. Or our deadliest liability. Time will tell which. Over the next week, I watched Amara with Dmitri like a hawk watches prey. Every morning, they trained together in that room, and every morning, I observed from the shadows. She taught him not just combat techniques, but awareness, how to read a room, how to identify exits, how to distinguish between genuine threats and false ones. See how everyone in this photograph is standing, little warrior, she said one afternoon, showing Dmitri pictures of crowds. Most people face toward whatever interests them. But this man here? His body is angled toward the exit, even though his head is turned toward the speaker. He's either planning to leave quickly or expecting trouble. That's what you watch for. Like in Papa's meetings? Dmitri asked innocently. Amara smiled. Exactly like in your Papa's meetings. You're smarter than most adults realize, aren't you? Mama used to say I saw things other people missed, Dmitri said quietly, and my heart clenched. He so rarely spoke about Svetlana anymore. Your mama was right, Amara said gently. And that gift, seeing what others don't, that's going to keep you safe. Always trust your instincts, Dmitri. If something feels wrong, it probably is. But it wasn't just the training that caught my attention. It was the way she was with him during the other hours. She read him stories in the evening, taught him to cook meals from her homeland, and most importantly, she listened. Really listened, in a way I'd forgotten how to do. One evening, I found them in the library, and Dmitri was crying. My first instinct was to intervene, to fix whatever was wrong, but Amara held up a hand, stopping me at the door. "It's okay to miss her," she said softly to my son. "It's okay to be sad. You don't have to be strong all the time, little warrior. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up when you do." "But Papa never cries," Dmitri sobbed. "He's strong. I should be strong like him." Amara's eyes found mine across the room, and I saw something in them that looked like pity. "Your papa cries," she said. "Maybe not where you can see, but he does. Grief doesn't make you weak, Dmitri. It makes you human. And being human is the bravest thing any of us can be." I left before they could see the tears on my own face. On the 5th day, I finally confronted her directly. I found her in the kitchen after Dmitri had gone to bed, preparing something that smelled like cardamom and honey. "Why are you really here?" I asked, pouring myself a drink. "And don't give me the hero story. People like us don't suddenly develop consciences." She didn't look up from her cooking. "You're right. We don't. But we do make choices about who we want to be. I spent years being a weapon, Nikolai. Someone who killed because I was good at it, because it was easier than facing what those men did to my parents. But killing that child, even just being asked to do it, it broke something in me. Or maybe it fixed something. I don't know anymore." "So this is redemption," I said. "No. This is survival. If I don't stop Kozlov, he'll never stop hunting me. And if saving your son in the process gives my life some meaning, then maybe that's enough." She finally looked at me, her eyes hard. "You want to know the real reason I'm here? Because when I was researching you, I found out about your wife. About how you met her." I stiffened. "That's none of your business. You saved her from a human trafficking ring when you were 23. Killed 6 men to get her out, even though she was nobody to you, just another victim. You could have walked away. But you didn't. You saved her, fell in love with her, and she spent the next 15 years making you almost human." Amara smiled sadly. "So don't tell me people like us can't change, Nikolai. You did. For her. And now I'm trying to. For him." Before I could respond, alarms shattered the quiet of the estate. Yuri's voice crackled over my earpiece. "Boss, we've got movement on the east perimeter. 3 vehicles, heavily armed. It's not Kozlov's main force. This looks like a probe, testing our defenses." I was already running, Amara right beside me, both of us armed and moving with the synchronized precision of people who'd spent their lives in combat. "Dmitri," I gasped. "I'll get to him," she said. "You handle the breach." Every instinct screamed at me not to trust her, not to let her anywhere near my son when we were under attack. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw something that made the decision for me, absolute, unwavering determination. "Go," I said. "And Amara? If anything happens to him?" "It won't," she promised. "Not while I'm breathing." She disappeared toward the east wing while I headed for the security center, where Yuri was coordinating our response. The monitors showed exactly what he'd described. 3 black SUVs had crashed through the outer fence, and armed men were pouring out, laying down covering fire. "It's a diversion," I said immediately, understanding Kozlov's strategy. "He wants us focused on the obvious threat while the real team breaches from another direction." "Yuri, pull up cameras on the north side, the blind spot near the old servants' entrance." Sure enough, there they were, two figures in black tactical gear, moving with professional precision toward the weak point in our defenses that we'd thought was secret. "Ambush them," I ordered. "And somebody get to Dimitri's room. Now." But as I said it, a new voice came over the radio, Amara's, calm and controlled despite the chaos. "Target secured. We're in the panic room. North corridor, 3 hostiles incoming." She'd gotten to Dimitri before the breach team, and now she was all that stood between them and my son. I ran. I've killed more men than I can count, but I've never moved as fast as I did in those moments, racing through the corridors of my own home toward the north wing. Behind me, I could hear my security team engaging with the obvious threat, exactly as Kozlov wanted. The whole thing was designed to split our focus, to make us react instead of think. But Amara had seen it coming. Somehow, she'd anticipated the feint within the feint, the real attack hidden behind the diversion. As I rounded the corner toward the panic room, a reinforced safe room I'd had built into the estate when Dimitri was born, I heard gunfire. 3 shots, precise and controlled. Then silence. I burst through the corridor to find Amara standing over 2 bodies, her weapon, my weapon, I realized, one she must have taken from my study, still smoking. She was bleeding from a cut on her shoulder, but her stance was solid, protective, positioned directly in front of the panic room door. "Where's the third?" I demanded, scanning for threats. "Retreated when he realized he was outgunned," she said, breathing hard. "He'll be back with reinforcements. We need to move Dimitri to the secondary location." I wanted to question how she knew about the secondary safe house, but there was no time. I punched in the code for the panic room, and the reinforced door swung open to reveal my son, pressed against the far wall, his eyes wide with fear but, and this surprised me, not panic. He was scared, but he was in control. "Papa." He ran to me, and I caught him, holding him against my chest while my heart tried to beat its way out of my ribcage. "I've got you," I whispered. "I've got you, and I'm not letting go." "Amara got me out," he said, his voice muffled against my shirt. "She heard them before the alarms even went off. She said her instincts were screaming danger, and she was right." I looked at Amara over my son's head, and she met my gaze steadily. "Combat awareness," she said simply. "You develop a 6th sense for trouble after enough years." Something felt wrong about tonight, too quiet, like the calm before a storm. So I was already heading to his room when the alarms started. "Thank you," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. "Thank you for keeping him safe." She nodded, but there was no satisfaction in her face, only grim determination. "We're not safe yet. That was a test run, Nikolai. Kozlov wanted to see our response time, our weak points, how we'd react. Now he knows." "Then we change the game," I said, an idea forming. "Yuri, talk to me. What's the status?" Through my earpiece, Yuri's voice crackled. "The assault team has retreated. We've got 2 wounded on our side, none critical. But boss, they knew too much about our layout. Someone's been feeding them information." "A mole." "I'd suspected as much. Lock down all communications. No one talks to anyone outside this estate without my direct authorization." "And Yuri?" "Start digging. Find me the traitor." "Already on it, boss." I turned back to Amara, who was now pressing a cloth against her bleeding shoulder. "Let me see that." "It's nothing." "Let me see it," I repeated, my tone brooking no argument. She sighed and moved the cloth aside to reveal a graze wound, painful but not life-threatening. Still, seeing her blood on her skin because she'd put herself between danger and my son made something twist in my chest. "You saved his life," I said quietly, pulling off my shirt and using it to bandage her shoulder properly. "I owe you everything." "You owe me nothing," she replied, wincing as I tightened the makeshift bandage. This is what I signed up for. This is why I'm here. No, I said, meeting her eyes. You're here because somewhere under the killer, under the Black Angel, there's still a woman who believes in protecting innocence. In doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. She laughed, but it was bitter. Don't make me into something I'm not, Nikolai. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone trying to be less of a monster than I was yesterday. Then we have that in common, I said. Over the next 2 weeks, everything changed. I moved Dmitri to one of my secure locations, a penthouse in the city with military-grade security and a team I trusted absolutely. But I didn't send Amara away. Instead, I brought her deeper into my operations, into the plans to deal with Kozlov permanently. Because she was right, the attack had been a probe, a test. And Kozlov wouldn't stop until he'd taken everything from me. But what he didn't know was that his former Black Angel had switched sides. And she was about to teach him why fear has a name. We spent hours planning, strategizing, using Amara's insider knowledge of Kozlov's operations to build a trap within a trap. The charity gala would proceed as scheduled, but we'd turn it into an ambush. Let Kozlov's team come. We'd be ready. He'll send his best, Amara warned during one of our planning sessions. He's obsessed with you, Nikolai. This isn't just business for him. It's personal. Your brother's death destroyed something in Kozlov. He won't stop until he's hurt you the way you hurt him. Good, I said coldly. Because I've been waiting 5 years to finish what I started. He wants a war? I'll give him annihilation. But Amara placed her hand on mine, stopping me. Don't let rage make you sloppy. Kozlov is counting on that. He wants you emotional, wants you to make mistakes. We need to be smarter than he is, colder than he is, more precise. Like you, I said. Like us, she corrected. You're not alone in this anymore, Nikolai. Whether you like it or not, you've got a partner now. The word should have made me uncomfortable. I'd worked alone for so long, trusting no one completely except Svetlana. But looking at Amara, this fierce, damaged woman who'd walked into my life and turned it upside down, I realized I didn't hate the idea as much as I should. Tell me something, I said one evening, when we were both exhausted from planning and my guards were changing shifts. That child you saved from Kozlov. The one that made you turn. What happened to her? Amara's face softened in a way I'd never seen before. Her name was Elena. 10 years old, bright as sunlight, and completely innocent of her father's crimes. When Kozlov gave me the order to kill her as a message, I looked into those eyes and saw every child who'd ever been hurt by people like us. I couldn't do it. So I took her and her mother, smuggled them out of the country, and gave them new identities with the Americans in exchange for information on Kozlov's operations. You gave up everything for a stranger, I said. For a child, she corrected. There's a difference. Adults make choices that lead them into our world. Children? They're just collateral damage. And I was done being the person who created orphans. She paused, then added softly, my parents were killed because someone wanted to send a message to my father's government. I was 16. I know what it's like to be the child caught in the crossfire of adult wars. Understanding dawned. That's why you're so good with Dmitri. You see yourself in him. I see a boy who's lost his mother and is desperately trying to figure out how to survive in a world that's too violent for someone so young. Yes, I see myself. But I also see the chance to give him what no one gave me, a choice. The training, the awareness, I'm not trying to make him into a weapon. I'm trying to give him the tools to protect himself if your world comes for him again. It will, I said grimly. It always does. Then we make sure he's ready. But Nikolai? She turned to face me fully. After we deal with Kozlov, you need to ask yourself what kind of life you want for your son. Because right now, he's growing up in a war zone. He deserves better than that. Her words haunted me. That night, instead of working, I went to the penthouse where Dmitri was staying. I found him asleep, his face peaceful in the moonlight, and I thought about Svetlana. About the promise I'd made her as she was dying. Take care of our boy, she'd whispered, her hand weak in mine. And Nikolai? Give him the choice we never had. Let him be more than what we were forced to become. I'd promised. But had I kept that promise? Or had I been so busy trying to keep him safe that I'd forgotten to let him live? Maybe Amara was right. Maybe after Kozlov was dealt with, it was time to think about a different future. But first, we had to survive the present. Yuri found the mole 3 days before the gala. It was Victor, one of my mid-level enforcers, someone I'd trusted for years. Turned out Kozlov had gotten to his family, threatened his daughter. Victor had been feeding information for months in exchange for her safety. I should have killed him. In my world, betrayal has only one punishment. But standing there, looking at this man who'd betrayed me to save his child, I thought about what Amara had said about choices. About being less of a monster than we were yesterday. You're out, I told Victor, my gun pressed against his forehead. Take your daughter and disappear. Go somewhere Kozlov can't find you. If I ever see you again, if you ever contact anyone in my organization, I will finish this. Understand? He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, boss. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank the woman who reminded me that sometimes people do terrible things for good reasons. Now get out of my sight before I change my mind. After he left, Amara found me in my study, staring at the gun I hadn't used. You let him go, she said. It wasn't a question. His daughter is 7. Same age as Dmitri. What kind of monster would I be if I killed him for doing what I'd do in his place? She smiled, a real smile, not the careful masks I'd seen before. Maybe a little less of one than you were yesterday. Is that your metric for success? Incremental improvement in monstrosity? It's the only metric that matters for people like us, she said. We can't undo what we've done. But we can choose what we do next. That's enough. Then, before I could think about it, before I could analyze or second-guess, I pulled her close and kissed her. She stiffened for just a moment, surprise, not rejection, then melted into it, her hands coming up to frame my face. When we broke apart, she looked at me with something like wonder. What was that for? For reminding me that I'm still human, I said. For saving my son. For being brave enough to walk into the lion's den and strong enough to stand your ground. Take your pick. And after the gala, she asked. After we've dealt with Kozlov and the dust settles? What then, Nikolai? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But as I looked at this woman, this killer, this protector, this unexpected savior, I realized I wanted to find out. Let's survive the gala first, I said. Then we'll figure out the rest. She nodded, but I saw the hope in her eyes. Hope that maybe, just maybe, monsters could find redemption after all. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonable cold, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you remember that winter in Russia is unforgiving. The estate glittered with lights, hundreds of guests streaming through the doors, politicians, business leaders, criminals pretending to be legitimate, all wearing expensive clothes and expensive smiles. And somewhere among them, or waiting for the right moment to strike, was Kozlov's team. I stood at the top of the grand staircase in my custom suit, every inch the respectable businessman, while beneath the facade my mind calculated angles of attack, escape routes, and the thousand ways this could go wrong. Dmitri was secured in the penthouse with 6 of my best men. Amara was somewhere in the crowd, dressed as one of the catering staff, her eyes constantly scanning, her weapon hidden but accessible. We'd spent the last 3 days preparing for every possibility. Extra security disguised as guests, sharpshooters on the roof, every entrance monitored by multiple cameras. The panic room had been reinforced, and we'd installed new protocols for emergency lockdown. If Kozlov's team made it through, it would be a miracle. But I'd learned long ago never to underestimate your enemies. Mr. Volkov. A politician whose name I couldn't remember but whose vote I'd bought approached with an obsequious smile. Wonderful event. Simply wonderful. Your generosity knows no bounds. I made the appropriate noises, played the appropriate role, while my earpiece crackled with reports from my security team. Everything was normal. Too normal. Where was Kozlov? Then I saw her. Amara, moving through the crowd with a tray of champagne, but her posture had changed. She was tense, alert, her eyes locked on something across the room. I followed her gaze and saw him. A man in an expensive suit, mid-50s, with the bearing of someone who'd been military once. He was speaking with one of the guests, but his eyes were moving, cataloging, assessing. He wasn't here for the party. He was here for reconnaissance. Amara's voice came through my earpiece, low and urgent. Nikolai, west balcony, gray suit. That's Sokolov, one of Kozlov's top men. If he's here, the rest of the team isn't far behind. Can you confirm he's armed? Negative. But he doesn't need to be. His job is to verify Dmitri's location before the team moves in. She paused. He's heading toward the service corridors. The ones that lead to the old servants' entrance. The same entrance we'd reinforced after the probe attack. But what if that had been intentional? What if Kozlov wanted us to reinforce that entrance, to focus our security there, while the real breach came from somewhere else? It's a diversion, I said into the comms. Yuri, pull up the cameras on the south wing, the old chapel entrance. The one we sealed off last year. Boss, that entrance has been welded shut. There's no way. Check it anyway. Seconds that felt like hours passed while Yuri pulled up the feed. Then his voice, sharp with alarm, Boss, we've got movement. 4 figures, cutting through the seal. They're using some kind of plasma torch. They'll be through in 3 minutes. All teams converge on the south wing, I ordered, already moving through the crowd. And someone find Amara. I'm already here, her voice came back. She'd anticipated my order and was already heading toward the breach point. Nikolai, you need to stay visible. If Kozlov's watching, and he is, you disappearing will tip him off that we know about the breach. She was right. I forced myself to slow down, to stop at the entrance to the ballroom and accept another drink from a passing waiter, while every instinct screamed at me to run toward the threat. Team 2 is in position, one of my men reported. We've got the south corridor covered. They won't make it past the second checkpoint. But Amara's voice cut through, wait. Something's wrong. This is too easy. Kozlov wouldn't send his best people through an entrance we'd expect after the probe attack. There's another team. There has to be. Where? I demanded. I don't, wait. The kitchen. They're planning to start a fire, create chaos. But what if the fire itself is the breach point? What if they're planning to use the evacuation as cover to grab Dmitri from the penthouse? Understanding hit me like ice water. The penthouse team, report. Now. Static. Penthouse team, respond. More static, then a burst of gunfire over the comms, and my blood turned to ice. They're already there, Amara said, and I heard her running. Nikolai, they used the fire alarm system to create a false evacuation order. Your men would have moved Dmitri to the emergency exit, which is exactly where Kozlov's team would be waiting. I abandoned all pretense of normalcy and ran, shoving through the crowd of confused guests, my weapon drawn. Behind me, I heard screams as people realized something was terribly wrong, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered except getting to my son. The penthouse was 10 blocks away. Even driving at reckless speeds, it would take 5 minutes. 5 minutes that Dmitri didn't have. I burst out of the estate to find Amara already there, throwing me the keys to one of the cars. I'll drive. You coordinate. We peeled out into the night, and I was on the comms immediately. All teams, converge on the penthouse. I want eyes on my son now. Boss, we're pinned down, one of my men gasped. They hit us hard, military-grade weapons. We've got 3 casualties, and they've breached the penthouse. We can hear them searching, but we can't. The comm went dead. Faster, I told Amara, and she pressed the accelerator to the floor, the city lights blurring past us. Dmitri is smart. He's trained. He knows what to do. He's 7 years old, I said, my voice breaking. He's 7 years old, and I've failed him. You haven't failed him yet, Amara said fiercely. He's alive until we confirm otherwise, and we're going to get to him. Trust your son, Nikolai. Trust what I taught him. We reached the penthouse building in 4 minutes flat, abandoning the car in the middle of the street. The lobby was chaos, one of my security guards down, blood pooling around him, another guard firing at targets on the upper floors. Status. I barked. They've got the 10th floor locked down, boss. We can't breach without risking. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I hit the stairs running, Amara right behind me, our weapons up and ready. 10 floors should have taken minutes. We made it in 90 seconds, adrenaline and fear giving us speed we shouldn't have possessed. The hallway was a war zone. Bodies of my men and Kozlov's littered the corridor. The penthouse door was blown open, smoke still rising from the breaching charge. And inside, I could hear voices. Men speaking in Russian, arguing about something. I looked at Amara, and she nodded. We moved in synchronized silence, the way only people who've spent their lives in combat can. She went left, I went right, and we entered the penthouse like death incarnate. 3 men were searching the main room, tearing apart furniture, looking for my son. One of them turned at our entrance, and Amara put 2 rounds in his chest before he could raise his weapon. The other 2 scattered, one heading toward the bedroom, the other toward the kitchen. I took the bedroom, kicking in the door to find a man holding a gun to the head of. Empty air. The room was empty. Where was Dmitri? He's not here, the man shouted in Russian toward his companion. The boy's not here. Relief and terror warred in my chest. Not here meant not captured. But it also meant I had no idea where my son was or if he was even alive. A noise from the closet, so soft I almost missed it. The man heard it too and swung his weapon toward the sound. I put 3 rounds in his back before he could pull the trigger, then rushed to the closet, tearing open the door. Nothing. It was empty. But there was a panel at the back, one I'd never noticed before. A false wall, and behind it. I pulled it open to reveal a narrow crawlspace that led to the ventilation system. Dmitri. I called into the darkness. Dmitri, it's Papa. You can come out now. It's safe. Silence. Then, so quiet I almost didn't hear it, how do I know you're really Papa? Smart boy. Even terrified, even hiding for his life, he was following his training. Verifying identities before revealing himself. Your mama's favorite song was Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She used to hum it when she tucked you in at night, and you'd always ask her to sing the part where the piano goes fast. She'd tell you that music wasn't meant to be fast or slow, just felt. And you'd fall asleep with her hand in yours, counting her heartbeats to stay awake just a little bit longer. Movement in the darkness. Then my son emerged, covered in dust and tears, and threw himself into my arms. I did what Amara taught me, he sobbed against my chest. When I heard the noise, I hid like she said. I went to the secondary position and stayed quiet, even when they were breaking things. Even when I was scared. You did perfect, I told him, holding him so tight I was probably hurting him but unable to let go. You did absolutely perfect, and I'm so proud of you. Amara appeared in the doorway, blood on her clothes but alive, and her eyes met mine over Dimitri's head. In them, I saw the same thing I felt, overwhelming relief, and the knowledge that we'd just barely avoided disaster. The last one got away, she said. Escaped down the fire escape. But Nikolai. She gestured toward the window, where in the distance, we could see fire trucks and police lights converging on my estate. Kozlov set the fire anyway. He's burning down your home. I looked at the flames on the horizon, at the empire I'd built quite literally going up in smoke, and I should have felt rage. Should have felt the need for vengeance, for making Kozlov pay in blood for what he'd tried to do. But all I felt was my son's heartbeat against my chest and the knowledge that he was alive. Everything else could be rebuilt. Everything else was just things. Let it burn, I said. We're alive. That's all that matters. Amara smiled, sad and understanding. So what now? I looked at my son, at this woman who'd saved him, at the ruins of my old life burning in the distance, and I made a decision. Now, I said, we finish this. Kozlov made his mistake by thinking he'd won. The fire at the estate was ruled accidental, a kitchen mishap during the gala, tragic but unavoidable. The attack on the penthouse was blamed on a rival gang, and the police, thoroughly paid off, asked no uncomfortable questions. To the outside world, Nikolai Volkov had been humbled but not broken. To Kozlov, it looked like the beginning of my end. Which was exactly what I wanted him to think. He'll come himself next time, Amara said, 3 days after the attack. We were in one of my safe houses, a nondescript building in a working-class neighborhood where no one asked questions. He's close to getting what he wants. He can taste it. Men like Kozlov, when they think they're winning, they get arrogant. They want to savor the victory personally. She was right. I'd received word through my network that Kozlov had been seen in the city, staying at the Metropole Hotel under an assumed name. He was here, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Waiting to finish what he'd started. But this time, I wasn't going to wait for him to come to me. Yuri has his location confirmed, I said, studying the building schematics spread across the table. Penthouse suite, 15th floor. He's got 12 men with him, all experienced. Getting to him won't be easy. We don't need easy, Amara said. We just need smart. Over the next 2 days, we planned the kind of operation I'd never attempted before, not a war, but a surgical strike. We weren't trying to kill everyone in Kozlov's organization. We were going to cut off the head and let the body die on its own. Dmitri stayed with Mrs. Petrov in another safe house, surrounded by enough security to hold off a small army. Before I left, I knelt down in front of him and took his hands. Papa has to go take care of something, I said carefully. Something important. And I need you to be brave a little while longer. Can you do that? Are you going to fight the bad men? He asked, his eyes too old for his face. Yes. Is Amara going with you? Yes. He thought about this, then nodded seriously. Then you'll be okay. Amara is the best warrior I know. Except maybe you. I pulled him close, breathing in the scent of his hair, committing this moment to memory in case it was the last. I love you more than anything in this world, I whispered. Remember that. Whatever happens, remember that. I love you too, Papa, he said. But you're coming back. I know you are. How do you know? Because you promised Mama you'd take care of me. And you never break promises. Out of the mouths of children. I kissed his forehead and stood, meeting Mrs. Petrov's eyes over his head. She nodded, understanding. If I didn't come back, she'd get him somewhere safe, give him a new life, away from all of this. Amara was waiting by the car, and I realized with sudden clarity that I was about to walk into a battle alongside a woman I'd known for less than 2 months. A woman who, by all rights, I should have killed the moment I discovered who she really was. Instead, I was trusting her with my life. Second thoughts, she asked, reading my face. Always, I admitted. But we're past the point of turning back now. We passed that point the moment I walked through your door, she said. Then, softer, Nikolai, after this is done, if we survive. I need to tell you something. Tell me now. She hesitated, then shook her head. No. After. When we've earned the right to think about futures instead of just survival. We drove to the metropole in silence, both of us mentally preparing for what was coming. Yuri had arranged for a distraction, a fire alarm in the building next door that would draw some of Kozlov's security away. Not all of them, but enough. The rest would be up to us. The plan was simple: get in, get to Kozlov, and end this. No backup, no escape plan if things went wrong. All in. We entered through the service entrance, Amara using skills I didn't ask about to bypass the security system. 2 guards at the service elevator, she took them both down with a suppressed weapon before they even knew we were there. Efficient, professional, terrifying. The elevator ride to the 15th floor took 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. I checked my weapons for the 10th time, made sure my vest was secure, and tried not to think about Dmitri's face. Focus. In combat, distraction equals death. The elevator doors opened onto chaos. Kozlov's men were already on alert. Whether they'd somehow detected our approach or were just paranoid didn't matter. What mattered was that we were immediately taking fire. Amara moved like liquid death, dropping 2 men before they could adjust their aim. I took out another who was reaching for his radio, then we were advancing down the corridor, a 2-person army cutting through Kozlov's security with brutal efficiency. Left. Amara shouted, and I dove as a door burst open and 3 more men poured out. She threw something, a flashbang, and the corridor erupted in light and sound. When my vision cleared, all 3 men were down, and Amara was already moving toward the penthouse suite at the end of the hall. The door was reinforced steel, designed to withstand exactly this kind of assault. But we'd planned for that. Amara attached the breaching charge while I covered our backs, taking down 2 more guards who'd appeared from the stairwell. Fire in the hole, she called, and we both took cover. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space, but it did its job. The door blew inward, and we were through, weapons up, ready for anything. The penthouse was decorated in the kind of tasteless opulence that screamed new money. Gold fixtures, expensive art that clashed with expensive furniture, all of it trying too hard. And in the center of the room, sitting behind a massive desk as if he'd been expecting us, was Dmitry Kozlov. He was older than I remembered, grayer, but his eyes still held the same madness I'd seen 5 years ago when I killed his brother. He smiled, and it was the smile of a man who thinks he's already won. Nikolai Volkov, he said in Russian, his voice pleasant as if we were old friends. I knew you'd come eventually. And you brought my former angel. How poetic. It ends tonight, Kozlov, I said, my weapon trained on his head. Your organization is already falling apart. Half your captains have turned, the other half are dead or in custody. You've got nothing left. I've got enough, he said, and that's when I heard it, the click of weapons being readied behind us. We'd walked into a trap. Kozlov had been using himself as bait, and we'd taken it. Drop your weapons, a voice said from behind us. Both of you. Slowly. I looked at Amara, saw the calculation in her eyes. We were surrounded, outgunned, and out of options. Dropping our weapons was suicide. But fighting was certain death. Do it, Kozlov said, standing now, his smile widening. I want you alive, Volkov. I want you to watch while I take everything from you, the way you took everything from me. Your empire, your reputation, your son. You'll never touch my son, I said, my finger still on the trigger. I won't have to, Kozlov laughed. He'll grow up knowing his father died a coward, on his knees, begging for mercy. That's legacy enough. Time seemed to slow. I thought about Dmitri, about the promise I'd made to Svetlana, about this woman beside me who'd tried to teach me that monsters could change. And I made my choice. Amara, I said quietly. Remember what you told me? About choosing who we want to be. She looked at me, understanding dawning. Nikolai, don't. Forgive me, I said. Then I moved. I didn't shoot Kozlov. Instead, I threw my weapon to Amara and dove for cover, drawing fire from Kozlov's men. Amara caught the gun, spun, and in 3 shots took down the guards behind us. I rolled, came up with my backup weapon, and put 2 rounds in Kozlov's chest before he could react. He fell, blood spreading across his expensive shirt, his eyes wide with surprise. The room erupted in gunfire, Kozlov's remaining men trying to avenge their boss, us trying to survive. It was brutal, close-quarters combat, the kind where luck matters as much as skill. A round grazed my shoulder. Another shattered the window behind me. Amara took a hit to her vest that knocked her down, and for a terrible second, I thought I'd lost her. But she rolled, came up firing, and dropped the last 2 guards. Then, silence. That terrible, ringing silence that follows violence. I crawled to where Kozlov lay, his breathing shallow, his eyes finding mine. You killed my brother. He gasped. He was trafficking children, I said coldly. He deserved worse than what I gave him. And so do you. Then, do it, finish it. I raised my gun, ready to end this once and for all. But Amara's hand on my arm stopped me. Don't, she said softly. Don't give him the mercy of a quick death. Let him face justice. Let the families of everyone he's hurt have their day. Be better than he is. I wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed to pull the trigger, to end this threat permanently. But looking at Amara, at this woman who'd chosen redemption over revenge, I thought about what I wanted my son to see when he looked at me. A monster? Or a man trying to be better? I lowered the gun. Call the police. Tell them we've got Dmitry Kozlov and enough evidence to put him away forever. Nikolai. Do it, I said. Before I change my mind. We sat there among the bodies and the blood while sirens approached, while Kozlov's breathing got shallower, while the old version of myself died and something new tried to be born in its place. That thing you needed to tell me, I said to Amara. Tell me now. She was quiet for a long moment, then, when I researched you, when I decided to come here, I made myself a promise. If I survived, if I managed to save your son and help you survive Kozlov, I'd walk away. Disappear. Give you and Dmitri the chance at a normal life, without the Black Angel's shadow hanging over you. And now? I asked, my heart suddenly pounding. Now I'm not sure I can, she admitted. Because somewhere in all of this, I stopped seeing you as a mission. I started seeing you as someone I could maybe build something with. Someone who understands what it's like to have blood on your hands but still want to be better. Someone who makes me think that maybe redemption isn't just a fantasy. I took her hand, sticky with blood and gunpowder residue, and held it tight. Then stay. Help me build something different. Not a crime empire, but something legitimate. Something Dmitri can be proud of. Something we can be proud of. You're talking about leaving your life behind, she said. Everything you've built. I'm talking about building something new, I corrected. With you. If you'll have a reformed mobster with a 7-year-old son and more enemies than sense. She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. When you put it that way, how can I refuse? The police arrived then, and chaos descended. But through it all, through the questions and the arrests and the cleanup, I held on to one thought: it was over. Kozlov was finished, his organization was dismantled, and for the first time in 5 years, my son was truly safe. A week later, I stood in the ruins of my estate, Dmitri on one side and Amara on the other. The fire had destroyed most of it, but the foundation was solid. We could rebuild. Not the same thing, something better. What are you going to do now, Papa? Dmitri asked. I looked at the two people who'd become my entire world. We're going to rebuild. Not just the house, everything. We're going to start over, do things right this time. And you, little warrior, are going to grow up knowing you have choices. You can be whoever you want to be. Can I be like Amara? He asked. Brave and strong and good? Amara knelt down, taking his hands. You can be better than me, Dmitri. You can be all those things without the mistakes I made. That's the gift of starting fresh, you get to learn from our errors without having to make them yourself. He thought about this seriously, then nodded. Okay. But I still want to keep training with you. Because even if I don't become a warrior, I should know how to protect people I love. Right? Right, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Absolutely right. As we stood there in the ashes of my old life, I thought about everything that had brought us to this moment. The violence, the loss, the woman who'd walked into my life and changed everything. And I realized that sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need, even if it comes wrapped in danger and deception. Thank you, I said to Amara, pulling her close. For saving my son. For saving me. We saved each other, she corrected. That's what partners do. 3 months later, I'd liquidated my criminal assets, paid off my debts, and started investing in legitimate businesses. It wasn't easy, half the underworld wanted me dead for going straight, and the legitimate world didn't trust an ex-mobster. But with Amara's help, and with Yuri managing security, we made it work. Dmitri started at a new school, one where no one knew who his father was. He made friends, joined the soccer team, and slowly, the shadows in his eyes began to fade. He still trained with Amara 3 times a week, but now it was about discipline and confidence, not survival. And Amara? She stayed. Not as the Black Angel, not as the Maid, but as herself, Amara Okonkwo, the woman who'd been through hell and come out the other side still believing in redemption. We got married on a Tuesday, in a small ceremony with just Dmitri, Mrs. Petrov, Yuri, and a handful of others who'd earned their place in our new life. No grand gesture, no elaborate celebration. Just 2 broken people promising to be better together than they'd been apart. Who would have thought, she said on our wedding night, her head on my shoulder as we watched the sunrise, that the Mafia boss would freeze when he saw his new maid training his son like a warrior. I laughed. Who would have thought that the Black Angel would save us all instead of destroying us? We saved each other, she reminded me. And we're going to keep saving each other every single day. She was right. Redemption isn't a destination, it's a journey, and we were just beginning ours. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. We'd have setbacks, face temptations to return to our old ways, and struggle with the weight of who we'd been. But we'd face it together. A reformed criminal, a former assassin, and a 7-year-old boy who deserved better than the life we'd come from. We weren't perfect. We weren't saints. But we were trying, and sometimes, that's enough. Sometimes, that's everything. Now, here's my question for you, and I want you to really think about it. If you've made it this far, if you've stayed with us through all the blood and bullets and second chances, then you owe it to yourself to do something. Don't just scroll away. Hit that subscribe button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to change, that monsters can become men, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing that walks into your life is exactly what you need to save it. Because if Nikolai and Amara can find redemption in the ashes of their old lives, maybe there's hope for all of us. Maybe we all deserve second chances, no matter what our past looks like. Maybe the warrior isn't the one who never falls, it's the one who gets back up every single time, no matter how much it hurts. So subscribe. Share. And remember, you're stronger than you think, braver than you know, and worthy of the second chances you're too afraid to give yourself. This is the end of our story, but it's just the beginning of yours. Make it count.